Studies for the Clarinet. Today we'll be working through Etude number 7 after the writing of Stephen Heller. Now, to be quite honest, I had no idea who Stephen Heller was before starting this Etude. Turns out he wrote many works for piano. He wrote in a very nationalistic style. There's a few pieces he wrote for piano and strings. Besides that, I don't know too much, but this is a really lovely Etude. Like other Etudes in this book that are taken after piano writing, I think that it also exhibits a really technical yet lyrical legato style, something that we can really benefit from as clarinet players who often have to play in this style with much of our solo work, band, orchestra. So, it's a really good opportunity to work on details. The technique is also a little bit on the tricky side at times. It's in the key of C minor, not super crazy, but we have some moments where there's definitely some technique involved, so we'll get to all that soon. Now, beginning this Etude, we have an indication of allegro. So I would suggest a tempo marking of maybe quarter note equals 60, eighth note equals 120. Before you start, take a moment to really hear the subdivision of the larger beat in your head, and then begin so you have a good idea of how you'll establish the first phrase. Being that this Etude is written with 30-second note subdivisions, I know that everything can look a little busy on the page, but just keep in mind that it's a stylistic choice that Polatschek used, and it's not as impossible as it may seem. For the most part, this Etude is pretty straightforward, consisting of long, expansive phrases that will require a good sense of direction, control, and breath management. If you consider to breathe, this is definitely an Etude where you'd want to use that. It's going to be really effective. If not, I've played this with a few moments where I took some time and added a breath, just so people who can't super breathe yet can have an example of how to approach this. Now, starting off at measure 1, we want to start with a good forte and make sure that you're maintaining this dynamic until measure 4, where we have the same idea, but this time marked piano. To me, I'm thinking of this as kind of a call and response, hot and cold type of deal. We really want to make sure the dynamics are echoing each other, the fortes versus the pianos and vice versa. There's a lot of that throughout this. There's not a lot of middle ground, so really try to feel like if you're not playing forte, you're playing piano. If you're not playing piano, you're playing forte. In measure 4, 8, and 21, these descending intervals are really easy to rush, I found, so I would definitely suggest making sure that you practice slowly with a metronome. Keep in mind that these minor thirds are descending very evenly. Make sure that between the E flat and the B natural, I found that's probably the most difficult one just because we are kind of going over. This is more of a cross fingering than the other intervals that are in that little pattern, that little moment. So just make sure that you're always practicing slowly from the get-go. We always want to make sure that when we start a piece, we're going for quality over quantity. There's no sense in rushing through something just to make mistakes later when you perform it. In measure 10, we have a C melodic minor scale that leads into measure 11. Now, at the start of measure 11, I would definitely recommend using the right C5 key to the left D flat 5 key for each instance of this motive. Personally, I feel like it's a little bit easier to play. It's kind of easier in my hands, but you might want to use the other option, going from left to right. Wherever you choose, just make sure you're able to play it at the tempo that you decide to perform it at. There are always at least 2 options with the pinky keys depending on something that you're playing. Sometimes there's only one. So in this case, we can use either interchangeably, so it's just a matter of preference. In measures 14 and 26, I chose to make these measures a subito piano after the crescendo. To me, I felt like it'd be a little more fun to add some variety to the mix since so much of this is repetitive. Now, in both these measures, I also added a slight articulation to the repeated notes to also add a bit more emphasis between the descending notes. I found that in doing so, I was less likely to rush, and it also provided a bit more direction that only using a slur could not. Because there's only a slur over these notes, it could be a little bit more difficult to hear the separation between the repetition in those groupings, the F, then the E flat, and then the D, and then the C in the measure leading into the repeat. So to me, adding just a slight articulation, nothing crazy, just a slight legato tongue, it can be really useful to just feel like you're not rushing through that descending note. Now, starting in measure 15, the notes leading into this repeat are a bit tricky just because there's only one option that can be used for the pinky keys. Unless you have the alternate A flat, E flat key, Even so, with this key, I find that this option is still a little bit more tricky, so this is definitely the way to go. Here's my score with everything marked in. Just before the repeat, I also decided to take a little bit of time on that ascending G major arpeggio so that I can take a breath before starting again. If you are able to circular breathe, just keep going. If you can't circular breathe yet, this is definitely the place that you want to take a big breath and then keep going. Lastly, in measure 32, I recommend using the second top side key for the written D6. Now, while it may seem easy to play the normal D fingering in this passage, we want to remember that at the goal tempo of around 120, this may be much more difficult to play cleanly. Using what we will call our trill fingerings, this second to top key, this is definitely going to be the only option. We can also use our G sharp key. Typically this is maybe a little bit more out of tune depending on the make of your clarinet, so this is going to be more reliable. It's easier because it doesn't go over a break. We stay within the same register, so given that, you're not going to encounter a lot of resistance and it may not be as challenging to play. It's also just one key versus 5 fingers down. So thumb, 2, 3, 1, E flat key. So, you know, in addition, I'm just also thinking of, okay, well, if I'm playing something really quickly, why would I want to use 5 fingers at once when I can just use 1? So, in weighing that scale, also consider that we have these available if and when you do have a fast passage that uses either a D or a C sharp and then occasionally E flat. So all these notes can be interchangeably used with the trill fingerings. The only thing is that they cannot be used for sustained notes. They're really good for fast passages, but I wouldn't want to use it on a really nice lyrical slow line of music. And with that, we've reached the end of Etude number 7 in Victor Polatschek's Advanced Studies for the clarinet. I hope that you gained a bit of knowledge and that this helps you prepare for a very fun performance down the road. In case you have any additional questions on this Etude, please feel free to comment below or send me an email. I'll get back to you very soon. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time for Etude number 8. Happy practicing, and don't forget to click subscribe. Way out. See ya.